We've been married for years, yet she has never said I love you. Even a careless touch from me would make her explode in anger. Even entering her room for a moment, she would grab the lampshade and throw it at me. After drinking, I accidentally stumbled into her room. She picked up the bowling ball from the bedside and threw it at me, shouting angrily, "You reek of alcohol," barging into my room. Who doesn't know what filthy thoughts you're having in your mind? Get out! With the door slamming shut, blood trickled from my head. Yet I could only shake my head and bitterly smile. All these years have passed, and she still hates me so much. When she slammed the door violently, it nearly hit the tip of my nose. The warmth from my head instantly sobered me up a little. Since our marriage, I have never had the chance to step into her room. To me, this place felt like a forbidden zone. She always says she's not ready yet, and asks me to give her more time to adjust. But as soon as I cross even the slightest boundary, her face would immediately darken. Her reaction is always so extreme. Tonight, while drinking, Shengyu even talked to me about it. He joked that I was too innocent. It's normal to think like that when you're young and in love. But after so many years of marriage, it's hard to defend. After all, to people who are in love, naturally, when the passion runs deep, would cherish a moment like that. Fang Yuan. This issue could be big or small. I feel that if she really loves you, it shouldn't be like this. Shengyu's implication was clear. Though a moment of turbulence flashed through my mind, I still firmly said, I believe in her. Give her some more time. But when I got home, I only wanted to check if she was at home. I never expected it would result in such a bloody disaster. A question arose in my mind. The Shen family's upbringing isn't based on any feudal or conservative thoughts. Could it really be like Chengyu said? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. After simply treating the wound on my head, I returned to the guest room where I had been staying all this time. Looking at the starry, quiet night outside the window, I lit a cigarette, trying to calm the chaos in my heart. The next morning, I got up to prepare for Shen. The clay pot lean pork congee is Yu's favorite. After all, I had drunk last night, and might have been a little careless. For this reason, I sent her many apology messages in the middle of the night. I even specially ordered a gift for her online. But after I finished everything, she still didn't come out of her room. I remember usually she would have gotten up by now, but I dared not approach her room anymore. It wasn't until noon that I received a message from her. She had gone to her usual nail salon. She was bringing 2 cups of milk tea for me and Xiaoyu. It turned out she had gone out early in the morning. She was meeting her best friend to hang out. No matter what, just receiving her message immediately eased my heart a great deal. I quickly changed clothes and went out. I bought the milk tea at the designated shop. In my mind, a wife should be pampered. But when I excitedly reached the nail salon, Yu and Xiaoyu's conversation was like a bucket of ice water, instantly extinguishing my enthusiasm. You mean, he got drunk last night and barged into your room? Then you cracked his head open with a desk lamp? Xiaoyu said with a tone of surprise. Your strike was a bit too harsh. After all, he's been your husband for so many years. How was it? Yu's voice was cold, and there was some anger in it. He doesn't deserve to touch me. Hearing this, a chill ran through me. The milk tea in my hand almost slipped out of my grasp. Are you really planning to never let him touch you again? Xiaoyu continued to ask. Yu fell silent. My heart also hung in the air. I waited in agony for her response. And then her words felt like a punch weighing 1,000 pounds, hitting my heart hard. I want to give my best DY time to Songjong. Songjong? Didn't he go abroad a long time ago? Yu's tone seemed to carry some surprise. He messaged me the night before last. He said he missed me, and that he would come back soon to find me. My ears began to buzz. I felt like my body was losing balance. All these years, I never doubted her. But now, to actually hear these words coming out of her mouth, I used to always think she just wasn't ready yet. I was willing to give her more time, but now I realize her rejection of my intimacy, her keeping a distance from me, was all to preserve her purity for her white moonlight. Suddenly, I felt so exhausted. I don't want to love Shen Yuyu anymore. Over these years, my efforts have been enough to repay the Shen family's kindness to me. Since she has long since given her heart to someone else, there's no need for me to keep playing the fool and cling to her. I might as well let her go and set myself free. I made up my mind. I was about to push the door open and clear everything up with her, but my movements suddenly stopped. Although Shen Yuyu hurt me, the Shen family truly did help me. Even if we were to divorce, it shouldn't be too loud or scandalous. Once, the Fang family was also quite glorious. But in the year I was about to graduate, the interest involved became tangled, and it was extremely complicated. Many who once envied the Fang family started pulling the rug from under us. After selling cars and houses and paying all the penalties and fines, our family's savings were almost gone. We moved from a large house to a small one, then to a dark basement, and in the end, we were forced to make do with park benches, bridge tunnels, and other places. After facing enormous setbacks and blows, along with days of hunger and cold, my parents quickly fell ill. I kneeled before the friends who once ate and drank with me, begging them to lend me money for medical expenses, but they no longer had any smiles for me. They only mocked and insulted me. I still remember that cold night, watching my parents with their severe illnesses, slowly losing their vitality. In their final moments, my mother, with trembling voice, weakly said her last words to me. "Are you in? Mom and Dad are sorry for you. You must live well. You'll definitely rise above one day." As soon as my mother finished speaking, her hand instantly lost strength and slipped to the ground. I kneeled on the floor, holding them, crying out in agony. But no matter how much I cried or screamed, they couldn't even spare me a final glance. They left, and I lost all hope of living on. But I can never forget the words my mother said to me. "The Fang family only has me left. I must make something of myself. I must step on those who ruined my family all those years ago. All the people who took pleasure in our downfall bow their heads respectfully before me." Later, I finally got my chance to climb up. Shen's father found me. He not only helped me take care of my parents' funeral, but also brought me into the Shen family. He helped me secure a position at Shen Group. From then on, I carried endless ambition in my heart. Relying on Shen's resources, I climbed up step by step. I learned to make connections, met many important figures, and gradually became an indispensable pillar in the company. Because of this favor, even if I wanted a divorce, I could only handle it privately. I had to maintain the Shen family's reputation. Thinking of this, I tried to adjust my mood and put on a smile. I pushed open the door. "Yuyu, I brought you milk tea." Shen Yuyu didn't give me a warm welcome. Later, I accompanied them shopping at the mall. Soon, my hands were full of shopping bags. Throughout, Xiaoyu would occasionally give me a very complicated look, as if she were looking at a clown kept in the dark, with a hint of sarcasm and ridicule. Until evening, the two of them reluctantly parted ways. Shen Yuyu and I went to the parking lot. We got into the car. With no one else around, I spoke up. "Let's get a divorce." Shen Yuyu looked a bit stunned. She stared at me blankly. I continued. "Our marriage has long been a mere formality, hasn't it? You have no love for me. You just followed the family's arrangement and forced yourself to marry me. A divorce, I think, will be the best outcome for us." Shen Yuyu turned to look out the window. She was silent for a long time before speaking. I want to go home. She didn't want to respond. And I didn't press her further. I didn't expect that after clearing things up, I would actually feel much lighter inside. We remained silent all the way. When we got home, we each went to our rooms. Lying on the bed, the fatigue of the day quickly lulled me to sleep. In the middle of the night, I suddenly heard some faint noises. It seemed like the door had been opened. I gradually opened my eyes. I looked toward the door. I saw a figure with long hair walking into the room. You! I rubbed my eyes. I softly called out. But there was no response. The cold moonlight filtered through the window and perfectly illuminated her as she walked closer. In the dim light, I saw that the figure was holding something shiny in her hand. After a brief moment of confusion, I suddenly realized it was a knife. I quickly reached for the switch by the bed. The lights turned on. Shen Yu, with a dark expression, stood holding a kitchen knife. She stared at me coldly, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and hatred. I furrowed my brows. In a cold voice, I asked, "What do you want to do?" Shen Yu didn't speak. She continued to look at me with a blank expression. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty. In the silence, I began to calm down. No matter how crazy she got, Shen Yu wouldn't be capable of actually killing someone. The worst that could happen was a trip to the hospital. Then I could cut all ties with her for good. I'd tell Shen's father about the divorce face to face. "Why do you want to divorce me?" Shen Yu gripped the knife tightly. Her face twisted with rage. "Is there another woman outside?" Her words made me feel absurd. It was clear she had someone else in her heart. Now she was accusing me of having another woman. I furrowed my brows. I suddenly felt like Shen Yu was a complete stranger. In your eyes, am I that kind of person? These past years, I've been working hard for the Shen family. Unless it was a necessary social gathering, I rarely even attended company events, let alone interacted with women. So what? Shen Yu's delicate face was now filled with gloom. If you didn't have another woman outside, how could you possibly want a divorce? I've already made it clear. I spoke calmly. Our marriage has no feelings left, so there's no need to waste each other's time anymore. In the beginning, you begged my father for this marriage. You humbly sought me out. She looked at me coldly. And now you feel like it's a waste of time? I froze. I see now. In her eyes, I was always so insignificant. Back then, Shen Yu and her white moonlight, Songjong, were deeply in love. Little did they know, Song's family was caught in a huge crisis. The entire family was at risk. The situation involved both politics and business. It directly led to the downfall of the Song family. Was investigated. What needed to be was sealed. That period, anyone who got involved with the Song family, their family would inevitably face misfortune. Yet Shen Yu had become too close to Songjong. She had even made plans to marry him. Shen's father wanted to eliminate all potential risks and avoid rumors from the outside world. That's why he hoped I could marry Shen Yu. Although marriage is a lifelong commitment, out of a sense of gratitude, I still agreed to it. I began to play the role of a qualified husband. But I never expected. For Shen Yu, this had turned into an act of snatching love. I destroyed her relationship with Songjong. That's why she hated me so much. You're still young. You could find someone more suitable than me. My tone was calm, my voice slightly hoarse. For example, Songjong, when I laid this matter out in the open, Shen Yu visibly looked shocked. I had always known. You never truly let go of your feelings for him. It's fine. I don't blame you. I just naively thought, as long as I treated you well enough, we could go on like this forever. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. As time passed, we would eventually become a real couple. I smiled self-deprecatingly. The smile was filled with bitterness, but I didn't expect that you wouldn't let me touch you, and that you were saving yourself for Songjong. A single sound. The kitchen knife in Shen Yuyu's hand fell to the floor. I helplessly got up from the bed, picked it up for her. It would be bad if you hurt yourself. Tomorrow, let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get a divorce. No! Shen Yuyu looked at me, her tone cold. What's wrong? Isn't this what you've always wanted? After asking, I added, don't worry. I can leave with nothing. All these years. Everything I have was gained through the Shen family. Now returning it feels only right. From now on, I'll owe nothing to you all. Shen Yuyu shook her head. She said coldly, I don't agree. Even if you don't agree, we still have to divorce. Are you really going to make me the green-headed turtle? I found it laughable. I went back to bed and turned off the light, ignoring Shen Yuyu. A night passed. Before the alarm even went off, I woke up from the bed. A year-round, never-ending work schedule had left me feeling utterly exhausted. After deciding to divorce Shen Yuyu, I decided to give myself a day off. This would also free up time to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and complete the divorce procedures. With a 30-day cooling-off period, I might as well move out early. I rubbed my slightly messy hair, muttering to myself, otherwise we'll keep bumping into each other, which would inevitably be awkward. When I stepped out of the room, I found that Shen Yuyu had already left. Seeing the breakfast she had left on the dining table, I couldn't help but freeze for a moment. Since we got married, Shen Yuyu never cooked, nor did she do any household chores. It had always been my responsibility. So she can cook, huh? I sat down at the dining table. A simple bowl of century egg and lean pork congee. The seasoning perfectly balanced. The simpler the dish, the more it reveals a person's culinary skills. But I didn't expect Shen Yuyu's cooking to be this good. It seems I wasn't worthy of eating the meals she cooked. So I'm only realizing this now, huh? After finishing the meal, I walked into Shen Yuyu's room. In fact, none of our rooms had locks. It was just that on our wedding night, she told me she wasn't ready. That's why she refused to consummate the marriage. I still remember. Her attitude was firm. There was no hiding the disdain in her tone. So I always honored that agreement, never crossing any boundaries. Until later, when Shen Yuyu's parents mentioned they wanted to have a grandson, Shen Yuyu's attitude began to change. She wasn't so firm anymore. It became more of a pleading, asking me to wait a little longer. I respected her wishes, and even kept the intimate gestures to a minimum. I waited and waited, until now, until I found out she had been keeping her virginity for Songjong. When I saw the truth, nothing else mattered anymore. I just wanted to find the marriage certificate and household register, and get the divorce procedures done as soon as possible to completely end this absurd marriage. I rummaged through drawers and cabinets, but I couldn't find what I was looking for. It seemed like Shen Yuyu had deliberately hidden it. Helpless, I had no choice but to call her, but no one answered, not even a text message. After waiting for most of the day, finally my phone received a message, but it wasn't from Shen Yuyu. It was a photo sent by Changyu. In the photo, Shen Yuyu was holding Songjong's arm. The two of them were walking toward a hotel. As soon as I saw the photo, my breath caught in my throat. It felt like my heart was being twisted. The suppressed pain was a bit complicated. Today, it must be the day Songjong returned. Shen Yuyu couldn't even wait for the divorce procedure, so eager to go find him and check into a hotel, desperately trying to put a cuckold on me. That's why she didn't answer the phone, didn't reply to messages. I held the phone, my whole body shaking with anger. Shen Yuyu, a woman committing adultery while married. I almost wanted to expose this to everyone so others could judge her, but I had to consider the Shen family's reputation, so I forced myself to suppress my emotions. Until late at night, Shen Yuyu finally returned, smelling slightly of alcohol. When she turned on the light, She was startled to see me sitting silently on the sofa. It seemed like she was taken aback. She patted her chest and said, "What's going on? Why is the light off?" I calmly said, "Tomorrow, go with me to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Let's get the divorce process done first." "Didn't I tell you? I don't agree to the divorce." Shen Yuyu frowned. Impatiently said, "After all these years of feelings, you really think you can just end it like that? Feelings?" I found it laughable. I asked, "What feelings do we have between us? You've been thinking only of Songjong. Isn't he back? I'll make way for you two. As long as we divorce, you two can openly check into a hotel." Then Yuyu's expression faltered, then turned to anger. Her voice shrill. "Fang Yuan, what nonsense are you talking about? I am your wife. Don't you think you're being excessive? Isn't this what you said yourself?" I raised an eyebrow and said, "Your virginity must be kept for Songjong." Shen Yuyu, you really are pure-hearted, huh? I have nothing more to say to you. Tomorrow, go with me to the Civil Affairs Bureau. My attitude was firm. There was no room for negotiation. After Shen Yuyu froze for a moment, she immediately changed her expression. She grabbed my arm with a pitiful look. "I was just joking with Ziyu. How could I do such a thing? Wait a little longer. Once I'm ready, I'll give myself to you," she said. She lowered her head, revealing a shy look. "When the time comes, you can come however you want." If I hadn't heard it with my own ears and hadn't seen the photos, I might have truly been deceived by her. But now, I only find it laughable. Stop pretending with me. Give it some time, and I'm sure you'll be carrying Song Jiang's child by then. When the pregnancy is confirmed, will you still try to say the child is mine? Make me wear a green hat for the rest of my life. I directly pulled out the photos from my phone and held them up in front of Shen Yuyu. She still tried to argue. "This photo has been edited. Fang Yuan, you have to believe me." I looked at Shen Yuyu, feeling disgusted beyond measure. "Do you need me to catch you in bed before you'll admit it? Isn't it the way you imagined it? Things aren't the way you think." Shen Yuyu grabbed my wrist, panicking. "I just rented 2 rooms with Songjong. We only rested for a bit. We didn't do anything." This excuse is laughable beyond belief. "Shen Yuyu, do you not find it ridiculous to make up such lies?" I said coldly. "I can have someone check the hotel's room records. Are you really going to make this such a big deal? I'm still trying to give the Shen family some face. Don't push it by being shameless. Tomorrow, divorce me. Let's at least leave some dignity for each other, okay? It's impossible." Shen Yuyu's emotions suddenly became agitated, and she grabbed a fruit knife from the coffee table, pressing it against her own neck. A red mark immediately appeared on her neck. "Are you crazy?" I snatched the fruit knife from her, not caring that the blade cut my palm. The pain in my hand and the nerve-wracking tension fueled my anger. "Very well, what you did. Don't come here acting like you're ready to die. If you want to die, go far away from me." Hearing this, Shen Yuyu stared at me and said, "Fang Yuan, are you really going to be this heartless? Isn't it you who's the shameless one?" I no longer cared about anything and said frankly, "You don't want a divorce, right? Fine. Then let's see what your dad has to say." Shen Yuyu suddenly became desperate. Even her eyes reddened. Don't tell him. We can talk things over. There's no need for him to know." I pushed her hand away. "I gave you the chance to choose. But today, you still went to him. We're done." I stopped wasting time with words. I left the house and spent the night at a hotel. I felt completely at ease. The next morning, I left the hotel early since Father Shen liked tea. I always brought some gifts with me. Although the situation was special this time, there was no exception. By the time I arrived at the Shen family's house, it was already noon. Mother Shen saw me and quickly welcomed me. Are you in? What brings you over today? I heard you've been very busy at the company lately, even having to rush through meals. Today I'm cooking myself, so make sure to eat well later. Facing Mother Shen's warmth, my emotions were quite complicated. I forced a smile and said, "There's no need to go to such trouble. I just need to talk to Dad about something, and I'll leave soon." Mother Shen waved her hand, half annoyed. "Silly child, no matter how busy you are, you still have to eat properly." Enough said. I'll go back to work in the kitchen. Before she finished speaking, she walked toward the kitchen, not giving me a chance to refuse. Father and Mother Shen had always been like this. Ever since I married Shen Yuyu, they treated me like their own. In every way, the Shen family felt like my second home. But sadly, because of Shen Yuyu, I had to leave this home. The Shen family villa had a dedicated tea room. When Father Shen saw me carrying bags of gifts, he smiled and said, "Yuan, I can't even finish all the tea you brought last time. Didn't you say no need to bring it anymore?" After all these years, who still comes home so formal? I put down the bags and joked, "Since you like tea, I bought a little more. If you have other hobbies, I can change things up for you." Father Shen chuckled and shook his head. "I'm just happy you're so thoughtful. So how come you're here alone today? Where's you?" "She has something to do," I simply answered. After sitting down, I chatted with Father Shen for a while, before finally saying, "Dad, I actually came today to discuss something with you." Father Shen looked up at me, his expression as calm and gentle as ever, leaving me somewhat at a loss. But I still steeled myself and said, "I'm planning to divorce Yuyu." "What?" Father Shen looked at me in shock, nearly standing up from his chair. He froze for a moment, then furrowed his brows and said seriously, "Did you two have an argument? Or are you just in a little spat? If there's something, just tell me. I'll take care of her." Father Shen knew my character well. If it weren't absolutely necessary, I wouldn't bring up the topic of divorce. I shook my head and said, "Dad, actually, after all these years of marriage, I've been sleeping in a separate room from Yuyu. We're like two people trapped by that marriage certificate, only pretending to be a married couple on the surface." Yuyu has always been thinking about Songjong and has no feelings for me. Now that he's back, I think it's time to end this marriage. Upon hearing this, Father Shen seemed to understand. What man could tolerate his wife thinking about another man? After a long silence, Father Shen finally asked me, "Are you in? Do you love Yuyu?" At those words, I pressed my lips together, lost in silence. Anyone could see the feelings I had for Shen Yuyu. Since we got married, I wasn't just playing the part of a good husband. The years of careful care I gave her were all proof of how much I put into this relationship. Even though she refused to let me touch her, I never did anything out of line. I've never had any intimate relationships with other women. I once thought time would prove everything, but I never expected that this kind of love would make me feel as small as dust. As soon as Songjong returned, Shen Yuyu eagerly threw herself into his arms. The more I think about how ridiculous I look, the more ridiculous it seems. "Ah, Yuan, you should know. I truly treated you like my own son." Father Shen sighed and angrily said, "You has never been easy to handle since she was young. Since you have feelings for her, let me step in for you. I'll make sure to give her a wake-up call." At this point, I still hope we can solve this problem in a gentler way. If we expose the photos of Shen Yuyu with Songjong in a hotel room, it wouldn't just destroy my marriage with her. It would also break the hearts of Father and Mother Shen. There's no need for that. Thinking this over, my tone became heavy. "Dad, you and I have no future together." How did you think I felt when I heard her say with her own mouth That she didn't want me to touch her because she wanted to save her purity for Songjong? Do you know what that felt like to me? It felt like 1,000 knives, one after another, stabbing into my heart. Who could tolerate their wife doing this? Even if it's just in terms of emotions. I can't help but care. Although I didn't finish what I was saying, and kept the truth about Shen Yuyu and Song Jiang's affair hidden. Father Shen's face still darkened. How dare she? What a shameless person. Ah Yuan, don't worry. I'll call her over right now. I'll make sure she gives you an explanation. At that moment, Shen Yuyu appeared at the door, glaring at me with resentment. Oh, so now you want an explanation? Fine, I'll give you one. Feng Yuan, you really want to make a big deal out of this, huh? You want a divorce, right? I've already brought the documents. I'll grant your wish. With that, Shen Yuyu turned and walked outside. Though I didn't know why she suddenly appeared, this had already brought about the result I wanted. I never intended to make a scene. I didn't want to embarrass the Shen family. I just wanted the divorce over as quickly as possible and to sever this ridiculous marriage completely. Other than that, I didn't ask for anything else. Dad, I guess I shouldn't call you that anymore. I stood up, bowed deeply to Father Shen, but I'll always remember the kindness you've shown me, the care you've given me over the years. I'm eternally grateful. Ah Yuan, Father Shen frowned and sighed. After the divorce, you don't plan to stay in touch with her family anymore, do you? I smiled but didn't answer, gazed at Father Shen deeply, then walked towards the door. When I reached the front of the villa, Shen Yuyu was standing by the door waiting for me. I glanced at the time and said, "Let's go to the Civil Affairs office now. They should be done with lunch by now." Perfect timing. Feng Yuan, are you really in such a hurry to divorce me? Shen Yuyu looked at me, pointing inside and saying, "Are you really going to drag my parents into this? When I joked with Xiaoyu, why did you take it so seriously? I swear nothing happened between Songjong and me. Can you trust me just once?" Shen Yuyu. The truth, the facts, honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. I shook my head and calmly said, "It's just that I finally realized for myself. All these years, you've only had Songjong in your heart. As for me, I was just a nominal husband using your father to get ahead. Since that's the case, I'll make it easier for both of you. After the divorce, you'll be free to go find him. After all, I've never even touched you." Upon hearing this, Shen Yuyu's face darkened. With a gloomy tone, she muttered, "All this because I didn't sleep with you, right? I told you. Give me some time to prepare. Is that so hard? Is this how you see me?" I furrowed my brows, about to say something, but looking at her self-righteous expression, I realized there's nothing more to say. "Do you have the documents ready? Let's go to the Civil Affairs office." "No, I don't have them," Shen Yuyu replied coldly, clearly not planning to leave. Earlier, her stubbornness was just to get me away from Father Shen. Such childish behavior seemed laughable. I nodded casually and said, "Then we won't divorce." Upon hearing this, Shen Yuyu's eyes lit up. She was about to speak, but I cut her off. "No matter whether we divorce or not, I will leave. It doesn't really matter either way." "What?" Shen Yuyu immediately asked. "Leave? Where are you going?" I answered coldly, "This has nothing to do with you." Shen Yuyu grabbed my wrist, her expression anxious. "We're not divorced yet. How can this not concern me? At this point, you still want to use this empty marriage to restrain me?" I looked into her eyes, indifferently saying, "From now on, I'll go wherever I want. I'll do whatever I want. You can't control me, and I don't need your permission." Feng Yuan. Shen Yuyu huffed in anger, but then quickly controlled her emotions. She softened her tone. "Please don't be like this. Let's just live a good life together. Whatever you want to do, I'll support you." She seemed to make a major decision, her face full of determination. If this were before, I would have been happy to first establish a career, then a family. After all this time married, the only thing left was having children. But what was once the thing I most looked forward to, now couldn't stir a single emotion in my heart. I've repaid the Shen family's kindness, and I've let go of my feelings for Shen Yuyu. Now I need to go. From now on, I'll live for myself. Forget it, I quietly said. What I never had, I no longer want now. With that, I walked out of the villa. I drove toward home. Shen Yuyu also drove, following closely behind me. I ignored her. Once I got home, I started packing my things. It turned out, after living together for so many years, I didn't have much. Only one suitcase could fit everything. As I pulled the suitcase, ready to leave, I was stopped at the door by Shen Yuyu. Can you not leave? I remained silent. Her eyes were red. Put the suitcase down. Let's just pretend nothing happened. As she spoke, she raised her hand and buttoning her shirt. This is what you always wanted, right? I'll give it to you. I'll give you everything, okay? As the buttons came undone, her pale skin slowly revealed beneath. I watched Shen Yuyu calmly, saying nothing, not stopping her, until she was left only in her underwear. I finally realized the reality. In a hoarse voice, I asked, "Is there really no chance for us anymore?" I didn't answer. I just said, "Move aside." Shen Yuyu walked heavily to the wall, slowly crouching down, hugging her knees, and broke down into tears. I looked down at her for a moment, feeling some sadness in my heart. Then I pulled my suitcase and left. As I stepped out the door, it felt like everything was different. When I closed the door behind me, it separated me from all the past. It was finally over. The savings I had accumulated over the years were enough to let me relax for a while. I went to see the mountains. I went to see the sea. As I rode a fine horse across the grasslands, I had never felt that life could be so carefree. One day, I finally received a phone call. It was a notification from the law firm. It was Shen Yuyu who filed for the divorce. After I left, she didn't need to stay in a marriage with just a name. After all, she never loved me. And there was also Song Jong. Divorce was just a matter of time. I didn't waste any time. I immediately bought a return flight ticket. Half a day later, I was back in the city full of memories and sorrow. When I stepped out of the airport, I couldn't help but feel a little melancholic. This city always reminded me of the helplessness and bitterness of these years. But it was also the city where the people I cared about lived. It also left traces of my life. I shook my head. I didn't think too much about it anymore. I walked to the roadside and hailed a cab. When I arrived at the law firm based on the address, I found the whole place was empty. "Is anyone here?" I called out in confusion. I heard faint footsteps from behind. Before I could turn around, a sharp pain hit the back of my head. My vision suddenly went black. I collapsed to the ground unconscious. I didn't know how long passed. But when I woke up again, I found myself in a dim place. I could only make out the rusted and old furnishings. It seemed like an abandoned factory. There was some movement at the edge. I struggled to turn my head, and to my shock, I saw Song Jong, also tied up and kneeling on the ground. But his condition seemed better than mine. His spirit wasn't depleted at all. I furrowed my brow, thinking for a while, and a guess formed in my mind. He must have orchestrated this kidnapping. He wanted to know how far Shen Yuyu loved him, whether she would disregard my life or death for him. The answer was obvious. There was no need to go through all this trouble. Was he trying to rub salt into my wound? Pain suddenly shot through the back of my head. My consciousness began to blur again. Footsteps sounded from afar. I struggled to lift my head and saw Shen Yuyu holding a briefcase. talking to the kidnappers. It seemed like she was preparing to pay the ransom. When I saw her, a flicker of hope ignited in my heart, but it quickly faded. If it was a choice between me and Song Jong, she definitely wouldn't save me. Thinking this way, I lowered my head slightly and drifted back into unconsciousness. Perhaps losing consciousness would make things feel a little easier. At least I could briefly escape this cruel reality. When I woke up from the blackout, I smelled the foul, earthy stench. Where was this? Before I could think clearly, a sharp pain coursed through my entire body, nearly shattering my consciousness. It hurt so much. My arms and legs felt as though they were broken. I couldn't muster any strength. All I could feel was pain. Every inch of my body felt like it was falling apart. There wasn't a single place that didn't hurt. It was so unbearable. I couldn't even differentiate anymore. Where exactly was I hurt? I had no strength to assess my own condition. I could only lie there like a lifeless corpse, completely motionless on the ground. The surrounding silence and darkness offered me nothing but despair. Sure enough, Shen Yu chose not to save me. At that moment, why would I still hold on to any shred of hope? On one side was the white moonlight I loved so deeply. On the other was the sham husband I'd been forced to marry. It was obvious which one she would choose. I'm not sure why. But as I thought about these things, a hollow pain stirred within me. Could it be that I hadn't let go of Shen Yu yet? How ridiculous! Self-mockery and sorrow evolved into despair, and it silently swallowed me whole. I slowly closed my eyes, awaiting the inevitable end. Dad, Mom, are you waiting for me? I'm so exhausted. Then a shrill police siren pierced the stillness. It grew louder and closer, urging me to open my eyes. A searchlight beam swept over me, and I heard someone shout, "Here! The person's over here!" Several figures rushed toward me, anxious. Hold on! I wanted to hang on, but my eyelids grew heavier and heavier. Before I passed out, I felt myself being lifted onto a stretcher, and then I lost all awareness. When I regained consciousness, the acrid scent of disinfectant filled my nose. I tried to open my eyes to see my surroundings, but I couldn't. It was as if I'd lost control of my own body. A familiar voice reached my ears. "Doctor, when will he wake up?" I concentrated on the sound, soon recognizing it as Chang Yu's voice. Another voice responded. "The patient has endured severe torture. There are multiple external injuries and internal bleeding. Those can be treated over time, but the patient's brain suffered significant trauma, damaging the nerves. It's highly likely he'll remain in a vegetative state." The words sent my heart plummeting. A vegetative state. How long would that last? I struggled to move, but no matter how hard I tried, my body felt utterly weak. I couldn't even move a single finger. If it's going to be like this, then don't bother saving me. I longed for freedom, and I could even accept the end. But I refused to live as a helpless shell. Shang Yu spoke with the doctor for a long time, but I couldn't make out what they were saying anymore. At last, I heard him sigh as he sat down by my bedside and said to me, "Ah Yuan, how can fate be so unfair? The weakest rope snaps first, and misfortune always picks those who have already suffered enough. Your parents passed away early, leaving you to fend for yourself. And to make things worse, you fell in love with a woman who didn't deserve it. Shen Yu's tangled up with Song Jong. What kind of mess is that? Just hearing about it is enough to make people laugh. Sure, she eventually came to her senses and couldn't stop talking about you. But if it weren't for her, how would you have ended up like this?" As Chang Yu went on, I learned a great deal. It turned out that after I left, Shen Yu deeply regretted her decisions. Unable to accept this, Song Jong devised a kidnapping scheme to find out who Shen Yu truly loved. At that moment, Shen Yu didn't choose him. She chose me. Song Jong was enraged. He immediately decided to take revenge. He had people seize Shen Yuyu, forcing her to watch helplessly as I was brutally beaten. That was the source of my injuries. Afterward, Song Jong tied Shen Yuyu up elsewhere, leaving her to wait quietly for death in hunger and cold. When Shen Yuyu went missing for several days, the Shen family grew suspicious. They started an investigation, and it didn't take long for them to trace it back to Song Jong. Using certain methods, they forced him to reveal our location. The police quickly responded to the report and came to rescue us. Fortunately, we hadn't been held for too long, and both Shen Yuyu and I managed to survive. However, her condition wasn't good either. She, too, had fallen into a coma and was currently recovering in the room next door. Hearing all of this, a whirlwind of emotions stirred in my heart. I felt joy that Shen Yuyu had chosen me, but I also regretted ever involving her with Song Jong. You can know a person's face, but not their heart. Who could have imagined that Song Jong would become so deranged? To commit such an extreme and dangerous act? If I hadn't come back, what would have become of Shen Yuyu under his clutches? I didn't dare to think about it. Amid the darkness of my coma, I heard another familiar voice. "Are you in?" Shen's father's voice was thick with sorrow. A pair of warm hands enveloped mine. Shen's mother spoke sorrowfully. "You poor child, what are we going to do?" Hearing the emotion in their voices, a current of warmth flowed through my heart. All this time, the Shen family had treated me as one of their own. After Shen Yuyu and I married, Shen's father and mother were my parents too, weren't they? I wanted to recover quickly, to get up and embrace them. This world was still beautiful. There were still people worth cherishing. I couldn't just lie here. A deep, unwavering determination filled my heart entirely. I could feel my own heartbeat growing stronger and stronger. Beside me, Shen Yu exclaimed in surprise. Ah Yuan's heart rate has changed. He can hear us. He can feel us. But that was the only response I could muster. In the long darkness, I couldn't tell day from night. I could only rely on the shifts of the nurses on duty to judge the time. It seemed like more than 10 days had passed. One day! Still not fully recovered. Shen Yuyu came into my hospital room. Choking back tears, she said, "Yuan, I've missed you so much." I felt her carefully nestle her head against my chest, her voice muffled as she continued. "I miss you so much. Please wake up soon, okay? We're still married after all. I promise I'll be better. I'll be the most wonderful wife in the world." After all my unwavering efforts, I finally received a response at that moment. Suddenly, one of my fingers twitched. "I'll take that as a yes," she said. Right. Time passed. One evening, the setting sun cast long shadows. The sky was breathtakingly beautiful. Shen Yuyu stood at the company's entrance, boldly holding a bouquet of flowers. For 2 years, she had come to wait for me after work every single day. "Mr. Fang, Miss Shen is here every day. The heirs of a wealthy family chasing after you for such a long time. Aren't you planning to give her a chance? What a devoted girl she is. I envy you." Hearing my colleague's remarks, I smiled but said nothing. When I walked out the door, Shen Yuyu ran over. Her steps were filled with joy. "Ah Yuan, I've been chasing you for so long. How about giving me some response?" I raised an eyebrow, smiling silently. She pushed the bouquet into my arms. "Take my flowers.